story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
Welcome to One Stories, the podcast. Today you'll get to hear Yesenia Montenegro's One Story. But before we do that, let's learn a little bit about Yesenia. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited you're here. And I can't wait for you to tell everyone who you are and what do you do.
Me too. Oh, I'm so excited. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what's your business.
My name is Yesenia, and I am working on developing my coaching business right now. I started with my own personal development, and I was inspired so much by the improvement that can happen when you invest in your own education, even if it's not collegiate education and you decide to design your own education, that we are all extremely smart. It just depends on, you taking the reins of your own life and kind of deciding how to do that. And from that experience, that's what led me to then want to really start diving deep into coaching, because I learned to find my voice. I learned to really lean into my experience, my education, my outcomes, and I wanted to share that with the world. And so that's why I decided to start my coaching business, even, get into speaking, motivational speaking. And so, you're witnessing me at the beginning of this phase, and it's really cool that I get to share this so publicly with people, because that's exactly who I am and kind of where I've really been focusing on developing the story, is focusing on vulnerability, transparency, authenticity. And I want to be that example for people to see the progress, right? So I want you to see me in the beginning, because I want you to be able to relate to that version of me. And then I want you to see the evolution and see how I'm doing it. And so that's kind of what my coaching is based off.
Oh, I love that. And, just from the time I've gotten to know you, you're just a natural storyteller. You're really good
Thank you.
with how you describe things and say things. So where do you think your inspiration came for your one story and for starting your business?
I think for me, most of it was I grew up, I'm Latina. And so I grew up with, a mother from Ecuador and a father from Mexico. And so even though they're both Latinos, it's very, very different countries. And so for me, growing up as a first generation here in the United States, I didn't always have the words, right? I couldn't really communicate with my parents, being that I was growing up in the school system here. And so although my mom, did learn how to speak English, and she was, a big advocate of mine, it was still very challenging. And so I grew up with facing a lot of those type of kind of like generational trauma, and just having a really hard time being able to explain myself both in the school system here and both to my parents. And so for me, I ended up growing up as that kid, a super awkward kid. I was just like a misfit forever. And so it wasn't until I lived through a lot of experiences that I was able to recognize that, oh, well, and starting to work in a school, that I was able to relate to a lot of the kids and what they were going through. And so I started to get into personal development after a lot of, I would say, after I hit a lot of rock bottoms in my life. And I decided that I wanted to change. And when I started working with the kids in school, I also decided, like, I want to be my own success story. And I also want to be a success story for these kids to relate to, and to be able to see, like, oh, here's a real life example of someone who's kind of similar to I am, and she's doing it too. Well, maybe I can, use some of the tools that she's using. So when I was writing the When Story speech and I was going through this process with you, it was the same inspiration that I had from starting business too, because it was like, I want to continue showing up authentically, and I wanted to be transparent. And so that was also because in part of the speech, I share that I wrote a whole speech, and I was working on memorizing it. And I was, the night before, I broke down, started crying, and I wasn't feeling it. And it forced me to go back to that initial idea of authenticity. Even though it was my speech, even though I wrote it, even though I practiced it, it just, again, it went back to when I was trying to write papers in school, and I would always break down writing those papers. It doesn't matter that I have a gift with words and I can write beautiful things down. Speaking is different. And so when I'm speaking from the heart, those messages hit people in a different way. And people, relate to you when you're just having a heart to heart. It's like you're just having a heart to heart with your friend, right? And so when you're having a hard time and you're sharing those things with your friend, that's when that true like intimacy can happen, when you're just like being raw and vulnerable. And so that's what I wanted to bring both to my coaching business and both to the speech, which was like, this is my time to show up exactly the way that I want to show or prove to the world like it can be done. And by doing that, we can cause like amazing change. And so if anybody is nervous or worried or scared, I'll be the first example to do that, right? Or, and I know I'm not the first, and I'm not like trying to be like, I'm the best. Like, no, 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 no. I'm just another person who's just trying to be like, here's another example. There are plenty of other people out there who are doing the same thing. I'm just another example for you. And then you can be another example for other people, right? So I kind of want to try that ripple effect. And that's how I was able to write the When story speech. And that's how I started my business too.
What I love about it is about a week before, you and I kind of had a run through with your talk, and you were kind of struggling because you were like, you knew what you wanted to say, but there were just parts where you're like, you said to me, like, I'm a natural storyteller. So like putting this down and like formulating this talk was a struggle. So when you came to me, I think it was the morning of, you're like, I'm scrapping my talk. I was like, yes, because I'm like, when you're naturally a storyteller and you're forced to like do something that's not your natural vibe, like
Yes.
before you even got on that stage, I knew you were going to rock that talk. Like I
Yes.
just knew it inherently. I'm like, yes, go with it.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is that was, and the reason why I shared that was because I wanted people to see that it's your intuition. Like you have to listen to your intuition. You have to tap in. And we are so afraid because we're so conditioned by all of the things that we've had while growing up. And, you have to write this thing. And it's just like, no, you know what? Sometimes you just got to show up and speak from the heart. And that's why I wanted to share with people. Like I literally scratched this last night. I had a speech prepared, but I'm going off key here.
Yeah.
Or off script. And that was one of the things I was like, I want to show people like you got to tap in. Like sometimes in order for the divine to come through when you're speaking, it's
Mm.
not by going on a script. Like life isn't scripted, right? We've heard this so many times. And so to
Yes.
be an actual live example of that and to be able to say like, I'm coming to you, we're going off script, let's see how this goes. And for that, it was I felt, because again, I was pouring my heart and soul into it.
Mm.
I felt that it was a very beautiful speech because it was like, I walked away feeling like I left a piece of or some seeds of love with everybody, because that was really my intention, was just to drive the point of love in this speech. And it was because I let go, I surrendered, and the divine was able to come in through very beautifully.
Yeah. I loved it. And you did do a beautiful job. You looked beautiful. You spoke
Thank
beautifully.
you.
It was you did such a great job. And I've been in that place before where I, had a talk and I got there and I sat down and I watched the other speakers. I'm like, oh, yeah, the talk that I wrote, like, I'm not doing that. And
Yeah.
and you have to trust yourself, and obviously like with starting your business and all the things you've done, you have to get to that place of trusting yourself to make that decision.
Yes.
So, you know, how have all of your experiences kind of brought you to this place now, like with starting your business and moving forward?
Yeah. So the funny thing is that, everything in my life, as I've gone through therapy and I've done a lot of healing work, I have always seen where like, and call it whatever you want to call it. I call it God. People can call it source. People can call it quantum physics.
Right.
Energy, whatever you want to call it. So that bigger thing outside of us. I've always seen that in the moments where I've face planted, I God was there, right, and something else was guiding me, and those things needed to happen. And I'm going to be real vulnerable and like intimate with you for a second, because I met you at your conference that I just happened to find on Facebook, at the Warrior on Chain conference, right? And
Yep.
so days before that, my fiance and I actually had a little argument and we broke up. And so the last thing that he had said to me was, go find someone else. And the thing clicked in my head. And again, we've talked about it. This is coming from a healed,
Hmm.
place. Obviously, we get angry and we say things, but it was the gift. I thank him so much for doing that, because my immediate reaction to that was, I'm not going to go find someone else. I'm going to find myself. And
Oh,
so that, like the night after, or the second night after, as I was processing and crying and healing, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, just naturally. And I don't know, again, it was God. It had to have been that I went onto Facebook, saw the fact that you were having this conference, and I didn't think twice about it. It's 3 a.m. I'm still in the middle of like the sleep, And I just signed up and I paid for it. And I went to this conference because I was like, I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to find myself. So this is how my life has been, where it's just like terrible things have happened. But then it was immediate, like there was another blessing that came to it. And so when, I went to the Warrior Unchained conference, again, I had no idea what I was walking into, right? I had been out of the conference scene for a hot second. And so getting back into that, and then at the end of the evening, like when you wrapped it up with like when stories and all of these things, I was really intimidated because I heard Sean speak first, and it was like, what? I felt an inkling of like, I have a story, but it wasn't until I heard your daughter's speech that really motivated me to go back in and say, oh, I do have a story. And I remember like it reminded me of who I was, because after I had ended up closing one of my businesses, I kind of went down this cycle of like, I didn't know where I was going to go again. And so I knew I had to come back into the world of like social media and into this, like, just again, helping people by telling this story. So this is just one example, right? There's a combination of all of those things. And I explain that in the when stories. I don't go into detail, but I kind of, explain to people a little bit of how my life has ended up where it is. And so I hope that, again, my intention with all of that is just that people walk away with like hope from it, and thinking or recognizing that when we hit our rock bottoms, when we have our face plants, those are the perfect places to be, because those are the places where it helps us use it as a trampoline to like propel ourselves to level up, right? And so basically this is what happened at this level in my journey.
Yeah, I'm so thankful that you came to the event. I mean, not just for, being there, but also it made an impact actually on my daughter, because I told her what you said to me, like it wasn't until I heard your daughter's talk. That was her first time on stage sharing a very deeply traumatizing event for her, and to hear that she affected somebody else, like that really helped her know that she made the right choice to tell her story from the stage. So, and I know that your story is going to do the same thing for somebody else.
Yeah.
You
It's the
know?
ripple effect, right? Like we're all part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, do you have a takeaway from when you wrote your one story and participating in the event? What was it like for you?
Oh, oh my gosh. I can't speak. I mean, I can't say enough. Like, seriously, again, I love talking. Like, I don't have a problem talking at all. But it's funny because, and I might get a little bit emotional about it right now too, because I think about it, and the amount of gratitude that I just feel for this whole event, for you, um, because again, it was in a time where I thought I had lost my voice or I didn't know. And you helped, you created this beautiful safe space for so many of us to be able to feel comfortable enough to come vulnerably and transparently, and just kind of, you loved us and accepted us. Like, you were the example of what grace and beauty and love is, right? Like, you take people and you're like, I'm just going to love you right here. I want to hear your story, and you feel for people. And so for me, the biggest takeaway was just like, this is what love can do. Like, Wendy is an example of when
Yeah.
you hold a space for people to just come, show up as you are. And we're just going to add beauty to your story. And we're going to give you a stage. We're going to highlight you. Like, that's what you're doing. You're a highlighter. You highlight the best parts of people, and you're like, you're not broken. Like, you're a success story. And we need to share that with the world, because everybody can have a success story. And so for me, it was like, I love the fact that God brought me to this place, because it was like, that's exactly what I needed. I needed a human example of what that looks like, to hold that space for someone and say, you're beautiful. I want to hear your story. I want to highlight your story. Let's spread that story to the rest of the world. And you helping tap into that intuition again and helping me trust in myself was such a big gift. And so, I such an immense amount of gratitude towards you. And this is why it's like, whatever I can do to help you continue spreading this message and continue this project, I am right there with you. And if I can't talk like enough or good enough about you, and when it comes down to it, it's like the amount of love that I feel for you, this project, everybody that we ended up working with, it's just like, I finally realized, I was like, oh, this is when they say, like, sometimes you get to a point where it's just like, there are no words. It's this an immense amount of feeling where it's just like, you will never be able to put words to it, because it's like, you have to feel it. And when you feel it, it kind of like shuts you up. And I'm like, is this what nirvana feels like? Is this what like those like heightened states of like meditation, where it's just like you feel so much profound love and peace? Like, this is what that must feel like. And so you take people, real life people, maybe we're not meditating, but you make them and you help them get to the space of unconditional love for ourselves, for one another, that maybe people don't understand that and don't see that now, but they will when they're in this. And you helped them tap so many things for so many people, right? And so just an immense amount of gratitude for you. And for me, it's like, Wendy changed my life. Like Wendy changed my life, and this whole thing like changed my life, and it got me back up again. So that's like, as much as like, that's the biggest takeaway is just like gratitude, love, and just helping me find my voice, and just thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Gosh,
Yeah.
I'm literally speechless now as I'm sitting here crying as you're talking. I'm glad we're not on video. Oh, I appreciate you so much. I'm,
Yeah.
the trust that everyone who was in this first Wen stories put into me. I mean, I felt it was heavy. I felt it, and I didn't want to let anybody down. And I wanted to showcase everybody, like you said. So I'm so glad. I'm so happy that I got to meet you. That you came to Warrior, and that how everything has unfolded has been just how it's exactly how it was supposed to be. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you so much again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So everyone, stay tuned. Yesenia's talk is coming up next.
When everything changed, I was lying on a bed under a twilight sedation, staring at a ceiling, at a mural of postcards from around the world, thinking to myself, I wish I was anywhere else but here. A few seconds later, my thoughts were interrupted, and I heard the doctor say, okay, it's finished. And I knew I was no longer pregnant. Now, see, I practiced a little bit of this speech on stage last night, and I felt blocked. I felt like I wasn't flowing. So I decided that today, if I'm genuinely going to come and talk to people as my most authentic, vulnerable self, to be able to impact some change, I have to do it off script. I had this whole story lined up of all the things, how words impact us and how words program us and how you become a manifestation of the words that have been told to you throughout the years. This whole story. And I couldn't understand why I felt so blocked. I wrote the whole speech. I read it many times. I couldn't memorize my own speech that I wrote. And I couldn't figure out why. I wasn't going to read the speech to my mom. And God knows how he does things. Because I did. And my mom, in her very mom wisdom, asked me, how do you feel about it? And I broke down. I started crying. And I said, I'm not attached to it. It doesn't feel like me. I don't know. And so she reminded me of times when I used to give these impromptu speeches to students that I used to work with in an after-school program. And she said, but think about the times when you gave those speeches to those students, and then they came back and talked to you about it, and they started implementing some of the things or the advice that you gave them in their own classrooms. What about them? Think about your students. Or what about the staff? Think about how much you impacted their lives. And so I thought to myself, yeah, why did at that moment did I start, and I mean crying, right? In my story, I had some pretty heavy things that I'm talking about, right? But at that moment, I felt my most vulnerable and I just broke down. And I broke down because I thought of the love that I used to have when I was working with my students. And the love that I had when I was working with my staff members and the trainings that I was doing with them. When I would talk to them, it was from a place of unconditional love because I had gone through so many things during my lifetime. I had hit so many rock bottoms that I felt when I was my most loneliest was when I was in a room full of people because I felt like they couldn't understand me and because I didn't have the words to be able to express myself clearly. So I thought about that and I thought, what would I tell my staff? What would I tell my kids? What would I say to the parents to empower them to be able to keep moving forward during these times? I remember when I would go up to the kids and they were really rambunctious and teachers were yelling loudly and you could hear it across the hall. I remember that was like nails on a chalkboard for me. I hated it. So I would come out into the hall and I would get them to settle down and quiet down. And I would be able to speak loving words to them. So then I started to think about the speech and why I've been having such a hard time finding the words. I have been able to finally get to a point in my life where I understand that words have actual healing powers. I was able to understand that because I had to learn about words. I had to learn that words have actual vibrational frequencies. You have high vibrational words, you have low vibrational words. Words like hate, war, low vibration. Words like love, peace, high vibration. And I had to learn how to use these words to be able to better communicate with my students and staff. Words that up to that point in my life hadn't really been shown or given to me. You see, the reason why I was able to relate so well to my students was because I saw myself in the student who wore long sleeve t-shirts in the summertime at the beach because he had eczema. Because I was the little girl that had eczema all over her legs and arms. I was called weird. I was called gross. Whatever illness was being spread at that time, they said, "Oh, that's what she has," and they would step away from me. I was the untouchable at that moment. In middle school, there was a rumor that went around that said that I was a lesbian and pregnant because I really like to give hugs and because I was heavier set. In high school, I could never relate or figure out how to make friends with all the people that like fit a mold. So then I had a group of the most diverse kids. We nicknamed ourselves the Multicultural Mafia or the M&Ms. But see, all of this, all my little awkwardness and not being able to communicate or clearly express myself, I've learned that it's the thing that was my gift, right? But when I was in college, I didn't understand that. I tried to run away from all my problems. I mean, really, guys, like I tried to run away. All right. I left my house to be able to explore my sexuality freely because I didn't want anybody judging or criticizing me. I bounced around from job to job. I even tried to run away to Canada to become a nanny and ended up getting deported from one of the friendliest countries. I mean, I literally also had my mugshot taken. And so why I say they were the friendliest is because the officer at the end of taking my mugshot said, "Well, I hope this doesn't change your mind about Canada and you still come back to visit us." The irony, right? See, all of these things helped build me to make me the person that I am today. I used to think that I was flawed and I was broken, so much so that at one point in my life, I was sitting in a math class in college and I ended up having a panic attack. Luckily, that professor had an idea because he had a son with ADHD, and he was able to steer me in the direction of the psychology department at UWM that would do full psychological evaluations. So it was in my 20s when I was diagnosed with ADHD, social anxiety, depression, other anxiety, and something else that is called adjustment disorder. It's kind of a shock when you get a diagnosis like that in your 20s, because then you wonder what would have happened if I would have had an advocate or someone would have been able to see that when I was younger. Maybe it wouldn't have led me to taking a cocktail of my prescription medication and chasing it with alcohol for 2 weeks straight, hoping that I wouldn't wake up the next day. You know, For me, it was like, well, who cares? I'm broken. I didn't win in the gene pool. My life is useless. It wasn't until my mom, in her sage mother ways, told me, Jessie, please just come home. Let me help you. Healing words. Words of embrace. So I had to step in faith. And I had to hand over the bag of pills. And then again, my fall from grace moment, when I had to tell my very Mexican Catholic father that I was pregnant and no longer chose to be. Those are moments that hit hard. You don't forget those things. So when I was working at the school, I recognized and I saw myself in every child, in every struggling teacher, in every struggling parent. And I thought, what if they had an advocate? What if they had someone who would just stick up for them a little bit, who would see the good in them first, didn't have to wait to prove it to me for me to already love them? What would happen if we started implementing those things in the world? If we just gave everybody the benefit of the doubt first? I'll love you first. We'll figure out the rest later. And so when things started changing in my program, is because I also had to start changing. I had to start changing my ways. I always have seen myself as this misfit, the little engine that could. I always felt like I was running to catch up to everybody else. I always felt like everybody else had figured it out before I did. Everybody had the note cards that I didn't have access to. So then I started learning, because I started getting trained in modalities such as Reiki or energy work, that everything is a vibrational frequency. So I started thinking, how can I take these concepts and start applying it to the school? How can I train people in this? Because finally, I understood a concept. I could understand energy very, very well. Words, still struggle with it. It's why when I, even now as an adult and knowing everything that I know, I've still got the inner child inside of me, and I still get really shy in big groups of people. Because I learned that I pick up on all of the energy. And all of a sudden, I start feeling shaky. I'm happy I'm wearing this dress because I'm shaking underneath it. But I also learned that it's okay to stand up on stage in front of a room full of people, shaky and all. Because when you give in to the fear or the anxiety or the shakiness or the fact that you feel like you're going to pass out in the middle of it, if you just take a deep breath, ground your feet, magic comes out of you. When you genuinely share your story without being in the confines, that never worked for me. I was never good at the rules. I didn't understand them. I didn't know how to speak them. And so what I ended up doing was becoming the person that I needed when I was a kid. And then when I was working with students and staff members in my after school program, I started becoming that advocate, and I started teaching them. In the beginning, it was very hard. I was standing alone. I was putting salt lamps in rooms. I was using aromatherapy, plants all over, twinkle lights all over, because I started learning about the frequencies of lights and how they affect students. And I would have people coming in and, what's that smell? But I knew that even though people didn't understand it, it was what I had to do, right? Many times in my life, I have known to be standing alone in moments that were very difficult, when nobody else understood me or didn't want to accept the words that I was saying, and I had to stand alone in my conviction. And many times in my life, I have had those moments where I felt like quitting. I felt like being done with life. And I would hear the voice of God saying, you are destined for greatness. And that was what would help me get back up again and keep going. So I wanted to take all of these things and put them into the classroom. And even if no one else was believing me, and even if my words weren't being heard, I was going to program these classrooms with high intentions. And I started posting positive words all over the classroom spaces. I started putting the lamps on and the twinkle lights. We started playing images of rainforests and oceans for the kids to see. Eventually, when the teachers would forget to turn on the lights and the ocean or put on the smells, our students were the ones that would remind them to do it. It took a while. It did. And it's kind of like what we're doing now, right? I decided that because I saw great impact in what I was doing in the school, and even though words or curriculums or things hadn't been designed yet to be out there helping other people do it, I decided, well, I'm going to step out in faith and courage, knowing that this is important, teaching people about vibrational frequencies, and that you can first start programming spaces before the rest of the people get on board. People have to feel it first before they actually believe you. And if you come to the table truly authentic and vulnerable, you can really impact some really great change. I was able to befriend some of the teachers that really didn't have a lot of friends. Those ended up becoming my best friends because what we ended up learning was that we actually had a lot of similarities. We were also vulnerable. We also hurt. So I took that idea and I thought, well, what if I started teaching and training and coaching people in how to do that? Because we're at an age now where we're speaking energy. And our kiddos in the classrooms that are having the hardest times, those are energy workers too. We got to learn how to speak them. So as adults, then how do we learn how to do that, to hold the space for that? Can we take that to corporate offices? Can we take that outside into the world? I know we can. I'm in a room full of people who are already doing that, spreading your message, teaching other people. So for me, I have faith because I did it for myself. I was able to teach kids. And honestly, the kids were the ones who picked up on it the fastest, understood it, carried it, and then eventually ended up teaching the teachers. That's the cool thing about it. We all have an inner child inside of us that at one point in life gets triggered. So I have faith that we can do it. If we sit down at the table and start having vulnerable conversations, we start saying, hey, I'm scared. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to apply. What kind of leadership could we develop? How could we really carry this on so that generations to come can just keep getting stronger and better and healthier and cut generational trauma? What can we do when we practice vulnerability and start looking at the good in each other first? I don't have to agree with you on everything, but I know that you're human and you are coming from somewhere. And I'm going to trust and have faith that you have good intentions, because that's how I am. And I don't always get it right. I throw temper tantrums too. But alongside with that, we can also then learn how to communicate better. So my hope for you and for myself is that one day we'll be able to come to the table together and have those really vulnerable conversations where we walk away just changed people because of the healing power of our words. And in the end, I know we all have it in us. We just got to work on it together. Thank you.
Your story matters.